I believe that the most powerful brands are built, from this authentic and aligned place. And when that is expressed, we don't just build, kind of like bro marketing. That's like kind of the opposite of, who we are and what we do at Firestarter. We're all about building from the inside out based on who someone actually is. And so I think to do that, one needs to understand deeply who they actually are. And then when that is expressed, through every touch point in the marketing, that's when the conversation begins. And that is going to attract the right people who you're meant to work with, right?
Welcome back to Influence Unlocked. I'm your host, Sherry Tree, and I'm so excited, like really excited, to introduce you to my amazing guest, Miss Willa Kammerer, who's with Firestarter Funnels. And Willa, I'm so excited to have you on our show.
Psyched to be here, Sherry. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we became like super fast friends, right? I mean, we met over chicken wings, didn't we?
Something like
kind
that.
of.
Chicken wings on a roof, exactly.
I mean, chicken rings on the roof. I can't think of anything more fire than that.
Totally.
Fiery Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
So listen, the reason we became fast friends is, first of all, we cracked the code and we had some similarities. So let's do that on our episode of Influence Unlocked. Take a look at these cards, and you've seen this before because we did it. What was your first impression of cracking your code?
Well, I love the simplicity of it. I love how you just kind of like have a gut reaction, right? When you see the ones like what lines up for you. And so you don't even really need to think about it. You just kind of like, oh, okay. It just kind of falls into place naturally. So I love having done many different personality, various types of assessments over time, which can feel laborious, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't really know. Like, I guess I'll say yes to that. But this just felt very clear and very fast. And I loved that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to reveal, what do you guys think Willa's code is? I mean, look at her jacket. First of all, like, bam.
I must be all about knowledge, right?
You think knowledge is your first one?
So, I mean, guys. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was an easy yes. I will say reading the values of action and nurture, and I think we've talked about this a little bit. There are times different situations present in life. And so I think, they can flip a little bit sometimes. I definitely, feel resonance with nurture as well. But at the end of the day, I am an action taker.
Yes.
I believe, action breeds.
I mean, your brand is Firestarter.
Exactly.
You can't get more action than that.
Yeah. So for me, and I have done this before because I love the system, and I think there's so much to it. So A for action.
So action first, and then nurturing, which is your son, by the way.
Exactly. And another fast friends thing was we both have boys. Their birthdays are very close, and your son Kai is just 1 year older than mine.
And they're both nurturing first.
Exactly.
Like they're going to be best buddies. I can feel it.
Yes, future vacations together.
Yes.
And then blueprint, because I do like systems, not that I'm necessarily excellent always at building them myself, but I do like things to have structure and to kind of fall into place. And so,
which is, I think, where the genius of your Firestarter funnels are going to come in, and we're going to talk about that, right? Because that requires a lot of
right. So if you can marry kind of like the action with kind of like the foundation underneath it, and then K, knowledge last, and
You're like, yeah. I've had some people crack their code where they literally take their last one and just like zip it across the room, like almost like an allergic reaction. But that's so important to know. Like, gosh, this is what turns them on. This is what turns them off.
And I think I was telling you the story of my son, actually, and because you have visual cards for kids, which I love.
Yes.
And I do have your cards, and I shared them with my son. And being the nurturer he said, Ma, this one, I said, so which are your favorites? Which one, seems the most important? He's like, Ma, this one, like above all of them, the nurture one, pictures of like hugs and hearts. And the fact that he could pick that up at 4 at the time, now he's 5. And then he's like, then these, but this one is the most important.
Yeah, so that one
I call
was
him
like
my little nurture boy.
Yes, your little nurturing boy.
Yeah.
Well, this is amazing. Let's shift this into what you're doing at Firestarter. So how did you even get your start?
Well, being the action taker that I am, I have always been an entrepreneur my whole career. So going on 17 years now. The core focus of the business for many years was always in the brand space, but we were a production company working with more institutional brands, so more in the B2B space. And then I just started as entrepreneurs and action takers. I felt this itch. I felt like I had more personally to say. I'd built a business that, on paper was doing well. We were working with a lot of great clients, high impact projects, but I felt like I needed to have more of me in everything that I was doing. And so that really led me into the personal brand space and building everything that I've built by making all the mistakes, scattering myself across 10 different tech platforms and investing in, hundreds, thousands of dollars of, courses, coaching, mentorship, trying to figure it all out. And then ultimately saying, it shouldn't be this hard and it shouldn't be this expensive to bring to life something and build a brand and a business online. And so that ultimately led us to this chapter. Firestarter has always been my company, but it led us to this chapter and iteration of Firestarter, really supporting people navigating and building brands and businesses online, supporting with the tech foundation, and then kind of an aligned brand presence.
Well, I love this. I mean, like the third part of your code is blueprint, which under stress is typically the one that gets activated. And like you said, one of the frustrating things on my journey, and a lot of entrepreneurs we work with, is we've got parts in the garage from all different sources. I mean, my gosh, you're trying to like bolt on, this tech piece to that marketing engine to this shopping carts. Like, what a nightmare cluster F it's been. That's
the normal way to build like the industry norm.
The fact that we even squeaked out any money coming through any of those hodgepodge versions. You've simplified the process, like, thank God, with Firestarter, and you're really helping to add the fire to the start of amazing entrepreneurs using your system. So let's talk about it. When someone comes to Firestarter, what problem are you solving and how's this helping them?
Well, we have those coming to us at different stages. Maybe they are, like I was, on those 8 different tech platforms and just kind of slowed down by it. And it's just diluting their impact. So thinking of one client here, she's like, I was on 8 or 9 tech platforms and now I can kind of like build a funnel in 45 minutes because, I can use your templates. It's all in one place. My whole business is in one place. I can have my courses, my community, literally all in one place. Right.
Yeah.
It's the tech, but I realized that, there's a couple of things that hold people back, the tech, but also the support. So everything we've done has been kind of reverse engineering from the problems, and those pain points to how can we build solutions around that so that literally there's no way all of those stuck points, we can help people get unstuck.
I love it. Part of our brand theme is make people matter, high tech and high touch. And this is what you're doing over there at Firestarter. Is you're taking away the overwhelm, because it is overwhelming, right? I mean, I own a tech company, but I'm not a tech person.
Same. Same. We're the translators, right? And I think in building Firestarter and as an entrepreneur, I have always known when I need to pull in people who know more than I do, right? And to know enough to be able to navigate and to kind of have the vision, but then ultimately to bring together the team to help bring it to life.
Yeah. Wow. So let's unpack the concept of influence. How would you define influence? What is influence to you?
I think it is the ability to move people, to kind of like open hearts and minds. And I think that for me has always been kind of a through line, in my work. And to me, I think authenticity is a big part of it, when you can build that connection through authenticity, which I think gets back to bank and understanding who you truly are and who other people are as a way to connect.
Yeah. So I think like this is a really cool concept, because traditional funnels maybe is like a one size fits all, like, hey, opt in, get my free thing, and go down the rabbit hole of sequences, but you're delivering like one message and a one size fits all. When you started to consider the idea of altering messaging based on who's coming into the funnel, like walk me through like the aha of that.
Well, we have geeked out on this, on Zoom calls and, things that we will be building together in the future, because I think once I started to understand the bank system and the potential for infusing it into the funnels that we build. So if you think about, there's 4 different types and they all relate to different kinds of messaging. A nurture person wants to hear about, the support, the community. A blueprint person wants to hear about the structure and everything that's included. And so it makes a lot of sense. They're not going to, the marketing messaging isn't going to you kind of need to have different messaging to reach and connect with those different people. So yeah, as you were saying, the traditional funnel is just kind of one size fits all, one funnel, but think about running ads and you have 4 different, ads that speak to each of those 4 types. They go to a different funnel and you're pulling people in kind of through these individual channels because you're connecting with them individually. I just think it's genius. And I think, we're just going to kind of continue.
This is where it's so exciting. So let's go back. Like on my journey, I heard this quote from Tony Robbins and he said, let your prospect determine your presentation, AKA let your prospect determine their funnel, right? So one of the very first experiences was a story with my wife, Esther. Before I ever married her, she was a customer, a client, a code breaker. And she went through our workshop and then went home and she was getting ready to promote a networking event for C-suite executives. She tries to teach the C-suite how to network with each other because most of them actually aren't great at it.
Yeah.
And she was selling that for 500 euros over in Europe, right? Well, after taking the bank training, she went home. She's like, all right, let's hocus pocus. Let's see if this really works. And she crafted one email, but she made sure that she put doses of blueprint, action, nurturing, and knowledge in it. This is before we had AI. Okay. So she had to manually craft the email like with her brain. Ooh. Took her a couple hours, she said, to do it. But she clicked send, and then kind of closed her laptop and went to bed. The next day, very busy. Comes home at the end of the day, opens up her laptop, and she had so many emails coming in, she thought she had a virus. Okay.
It's amazing.
She ended up having 94 people register and pay for her workshop in 24 hours, whereas historically it was 25 or 30. Wow. Literally, she tripled her results by just bankifying the email. So that was one of my first ahas of like, wow, man, like really seeing this in action. Then there was another guy more recently in the past year, he does millions of dollars of ad spend with Google, with big clients on the Google platform. And he started to bankify the ads, take one ad and build 4 different versions of it, a blueprint, an action, a nurturing, and a knowledge dominant ad. And then let the customer click on the ad that resonates best with them, like a choose your own adventure. Yeah. They click the ad and he built the sales funnel that now goes along with that code. He said he took his opt-in conversion from 4% to 22%. Yep. By just building that in. Like, where do you see this going? Because this is exciting.
Well, it's reminding you're making me think of like not trying to be all things to all people. Yeah. And so, Esther magically, like it sounds like she did kind of interweave so that she was kind of hitting all those points. And I remember exactly. And I remember when when I've heard you present, you kind of at one point kind of subtly slipped in, you may or may not notice it, but I am, kind of like making sure that I am hitting on the points, for all 4 codes. So I like that, there's kind of different approaches with it that you can kind of like intersperse to make sure you're touching, on all the hitting something when you are trying to communicate with a lot of people at one time. But then even further, let's not try to be all things to all people, to really segment it out. I think it's fascinating. And then also, in running a business, we've seen the power and are just beginning to explore being able to understand our clients in that way, getting their, bank codes, and, just that totally changes the conversation for how we talk about how we can support them, how we can, support them at a higher level and all of that. So much value in it.
This is exciting. So part of the framework that we talk about is how to connect, how to communicate, and how to convert. How do you pull that into what you're doing with funnels?
Sure. I mean, connect, right? You have to kind of like pique interest and make someone, want to take that next step. So I think that comes down to design, language, and, like we've talked, that kind of like front end experience that's going to make a funnel is all about getting someone to take that next step and guiding the journey, right?
Yes.
So I think, on the front end, resonating with the person through speaking to their code, what drives them to take action. And then, further along in the sequence, being able to, when it starts to become a conversation, having the person on the team who's going to first interface with that, knowing the code of the person to be able to then kind of present the conversation, the offer, everything that we do in a way that is going to connect. It's the ability to kind of know someone and know how they're wired before you actually begin that conversation. So it's really powerful.
Okay. So let's say, where do you put the majority of the responsibility, or how would you split it? the mechanics of the funnel and the job that the funnel is supposed to do versus the job that the business owner, entrepreneur, or sales team is supposed to do with the client journey going through the funnel? Like, who has to do more? Is it an equal relationship?
I think that there's a lot of kind of misbelief out there. I mean, there are great funnels and great ads out there, but at the end of the day, connection is so important. And I think that it really is about building relationships. And you can have a great ad and a great funnel, but at the end of the day, people do business with people. And so I think if you're not able to build that relationship once someone gets to the end of that funnel, then it's not going to go anywhere. So I would, kind of like bet every day of the week on being able to kind of like build real relationships. I really believe funnels important. The tech is important, funnels are important, but I think that, the relationship side of everything is really important too.
Yeah, because you probably have people who are like hoping that it's like magical lucky charms that you guys build the funnel and just magically customers are going to convert out the back end and money just starts dropping into the account versus like, oh, I actually need to talk to that person.
It's the full journey, right? And I think also we work, and I think this touches also, on your work is the authenticity and alignment with, I believe that the most powerful brands are built, from this authentic and aligned place. And when that is expressed, we don't just build, kind of like bro marketing, like one size fits all funnels. That's like kind of the opposite of, who we are and what we do at Firestarter. We're all about building, from the inside out based on who someone actually is. And so I think to do that, one needs to understand deeply who they actually are. And then when that is expressed, through every touch point in the marketing, that's when the conversation begins. And that is going to attract the right people who you're meant to work with, right?
Yeah. What would you say is the top mistake that people are making out there when it comes to these topics?
I think that there's a lot of pressure and a lot of noise online as people are trying to, as I did, kind of like figure things out, right? Crack the code in another way. And so we see that a lot of people, kind of like build their businesses and brands from this place of should, this seems to be working for this person. This seems to be working for this person. So I'm going to borrow here, borrow there. And then they kind of cobble together their strategy and their brand presence, borrowing from all these places, but kind of losing the thread of who they actually are and how they're uniquely wired and meant to build. And so I think that anytime that there can be a tool like Bank to help people connect and help validate that we are all different, that we're not all meant to, maybe that person, maybe you're an N, and maybe that person who you admire who seems to have it all figured out, maybe they're a B. And if you're borrowing the strategies of B, but you're an N, like no wonder why it's not converting, because it's not authentic, congruent, aligned. It's not connecting. It's not you.
There was a really cool study that was done, and I'd love to get your perspective on this in funnels, because the study was done by the Chalet Group, and they said, hey, do personality types matter in the sales process? So if you're thinking like traditional sales where you're talking face to face, like I was a financial advisor, you're meeting with your client, but in funnels, they're reading a screen, right? Or on their phone or their device. They said only 18% of people will buy from a salesperson, whether the salesperson is a person or the message, right? Who doesn't match the buyer's personality type, versus 82% success rate when personality types are aligned.
Interesting.
Like, how would you take that study and then apply that to what you're doing at Firestarter?
Well, I think it goes a long way to have the person who is in that sales conversation understanding. I mean, sure, you could go down and, kind of like have the four ad sets, the four funnels, the four salespeople who are, all four types. Like you could really play it out at every single stage. But, if you only have one salesperson, having them armed with the knowledge, and I know you have trainings in, your ecosystem. And I think that's, being able to unlock that power of being able to communicate and kind of speak to in a way that's kind of like respectful and connected to that person. You mentioned you were asking kind of about like how can funnels be like can you reach different people through different kind of like marketing messages and things? I mean, I think it goes back to the simplicity of these cards, right? I mean, this in a sense is a funnel, right? I'm like, going down the funnel of this speaks to me, right? And I'm like, oh, I connect with this in the same way that, I could kind of scroll on an ad on Instagram and, if it were, action language, I'd probably click on it because I'm resonating with it in the same way I'm, resonating with that card.
Yeah. So one of the things, like there's a lot of, I don't know if it's a myth or a conception in funnels that you want to eliminate friction, right? You want to get the opt-in, you want to get them to that next stage. How do you think a personality assessment would go? Like, do you think it's a smart idea to put it at the top of the funnel where you crack their code at the beginning and then route them? Or do you think that needs to happen at a later stage based on the type of behavior you're seeing with people opting into these things? Where do you think it fits in your perspective?
I mean, I could see it kind of depending on the objective, fitting at different points. I mean, I think the cracking of the code almost happens if we were going with like the 4-funnel model, right? The cracking of the code almost happens without cracking the code because it's just based on kind of what they opt in. If we're actually having them, kind of go through the exercise, like we have a crack my code / Firestarter. And, if we're going through that exercise, I think that could be a great like pre-call kind of like nurture warm up. So maybe they've, resonated with the messaging. They've kind of come through the funnel. They've like booked a call. And then as a way to kind of further nurture, it's a nice, we're always looking at, how can we build the connection continue to build the nurturing connection between when they first enter in and kind of opt in to when we're actually going to kind of like get on the call together. So I think that could be a powerful, hey, here's this give, like we want to kind of prime this conversation together. And I think it's a gift anytime you can give someone a deeper level of self-knowing and self-understanding. So I think it could be really powerful.
I want to actually test this with you, right? Like, so for us, when someone comes to our code crack funnel, it's the top of the funnel. Like that is why they're there, is to crack their code, right? They're not there for another reason. So clearly it's, hey, crack your code. We're going to gift you a $99 customized report. It's going to take you less than 90 seconds. So at least the time friction piece is pretty much gone. They opt in, so they share their information, but they get that report in exchange. Of course, then we lead them down our path. We have a lot of clients that have funnels, right? And part of the question is, should I start by cracking their code, or should I get them to the topic that they came to in the first place with me, which is unrelated to the bank system, obviously, but maybe put it as a step 2, which we have clients that tested as step 1, tested as step 2. I want to be able to do some really cool experiments with you so that we can see, and not just how did it impact the opt-in numbers, but how did it actually impact the conversion numbers?
Well, it's all about the quality, and I think that, it can sound great, like, oh, I'm getting, whatever, $2 leads, but what's the quality? What's the show rate? It's what's the alignment? You may be selling a high ticket offer, but your $2 leads, which sounds great on paper, but they might not be your ideal buyers. You actually may be a lot better, getting, $50, $100 leads who are your ideal buyer ready for that, $10K, $25K offer. So, there's certainly nuance to it. I was just thinking, so when people come to your funnel, do you have, I know you have kind of like the cards for people to kind of crack their codes. Have you experimented with kind of like, say like a 12 question kind of like interactive quiz that kind of like teases out which their code is? Because I've been playing around with AI and kind of building some quizzes, things like that we haven't actually started running any traffic to, but we are thinking of as a kind of top of funnel, where it is similarly like, hey, this is going to take you 90 seconds, 12 questions, but I could see, 12 questions that could tease out what their code is.
You can
right?
do it the analog way, but I'll tell you, I have a lot of people on my show. I talk to a lot of great influencers, and here's the overwhelming feedback is that they were relieved that they didn't have to do questions.
That makes sense.
Right? Yep. I think there's a lot of assessment fatigue. I know when I get one, if I have to keep answering and it's like, hey, you're 1 out of 50 done, or you don't know, you don't know that there's 50. You just keep doing it and doing it.
I'm
and
talking
just like, God,
8 questions.
Right. So I think time is of the essence in today's world. AI has sped things up. Like I was hearing the other day, you know, a teenage kid that's trying to figure out what they're going to study in college. And they're like, why would I take 7 years to go figure out how to be a doctor when an AI can learn it in like 7 seconds, right? Like time is changing. So the drag and drop of the cards is so simple that it almost feels like a cool, fun thing to do versus maybe a little bit more of a tedious. I think once you have captured that client and you have them genuinely interested in definitely asking more questions. And this is something that we're going to do together. We're going to test it out. We're going to see. And like you said, you know, for the customer on our side, that's like, maybe I don't want to crack their code first. Maybe I want to do it in a second step. Then let's test where it converts, because maybe you get more opt-ins, but you converted possibly less than if you actually crack their code first, and maybe there was a little bit of resistance or friction. I'm not sure, but
which can actually be a good thing. So, you know, obviously we're always experimenting with funnels, you know, and different types of funnels. So, you know, one that we have run and experimented with pretty good success is an application funnel. And so to book, you know, calls for, you know, higher qualified, higher ticket buyers. And there is friction, right? They have to go through and they have to answer, you know, 5 or 6 questions. But if someone can't even go through before they book the call, but if someone can't even go through, you know, those kind of pre-qualifying questions, are they really going to be, you know, your ideal client to work with at the level? So I think it's always a balance. It depends on your objective. If it's, you know, say, webinar registrations, maybe you want to reduce friction. So maybe, you know, just have an email and phone number opt-in, maybe even drop the name. But if you are, you know, really trying to kind of get those qualified higher ticket buyers, then having, you know, those friction points to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, because time is money. That's time that, you know, you want to make sure that those people are actually going to follow through and show up for the calls that they book, right?
Yeah. Now you guys at Firestarter are a full stop shop, right? Like
we are.
Do you take people who are like, I'm just getting started and I need help? Or do you prefer that your clients already have traction underneath them? Their products and stuff are built out and now they just need marketing and funnels?
It really depends. I think we have, you know, built an ecosystem where there's multiple doorways in, and we have the support for those different stages. So, you know, at the base, we have our Firestarter Funnels, you know, high level white label software platform, do it yourself with a lot of support. So we have, you know, multiple weekly live tech sessions, 24/7 chat, like a lot of support built around that. And that's perfect for someone who is, you know, in motion, has everything built out, or it's someone who is really just at the beginning stages and kind of wants to do it in the right way, not scattering themselves, you know, across all these different tech platforms. But so we have, you know, people on the platform who really are at all stages. I think in our higher level services, you know, building out, you know, high converting funnels, websites, we really, I think, are best positioned for people who have an expertise, but are really looking to take their digital brand presence, kind of front end brand, back end tech to that next level. And we kind of build the high caliber brand and tech presence and systems around that. We're very modular in how we work. And so, you know, if someone is coming to us and wants that kind of like full ecosystem and kind of brand and tech system built out, but doesn't have that kind of clarity, then we have, you know, okay, like we can work with you kind of in this container to kind of like get to that clarity, fast track that clarity, and then we'll start building things out. And then we also, we build the foundation, but then you've got to drive traffic to that foundation. So we also run paid ads, you know, which is another
This is
part
awesome.
of the equation.
We got a lot more to talk about.
Yes,
so
I'm
here's
excited.
what I'm excited about is the collaboration between Codebreaker and Firestarter, right? And even being able to help our clients who want to bankify their sales funnel experiences, integrate our methodology with some of the sales funnel technology that's out there. These collaborations are so powerful. How does our audience get a hold of you?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram at Willa Kammerer, Kammerer. And you can find out about what we're doing at Firestarter Funnels. I run a weekly live webinar called the Personal Brand Operating System Masterclass, where you can kind of learn about all of our tech and how we're trying to kind of simplify the journey of building a brand and a business online and the tech behind it. So that's the personalbrandos.com. And I do that every Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific.
Well, guys, you heard it right here from Willa. She's a fireball, and I love Firestarter, what she's doing. So make sure you get a hold of her, attend her masterclass. And if you haven't yet cracked your code, please do that. That is our free gift for you to figure out a little bit more about you. That's the mirror, but we built it so that you can actually look through the window at who your clients are, learning how to connect, how to communicate, and how to convert. When you do that, you're going to make people matter and take it to the bank. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, get the word out there. We want to help a lot more people. And Willa, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you, Sherry.